And we're live. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Finance Magnates podcast, talking to leading blockchain figures. And today we have Stewart Dennis joining us from California. Good night, Stewart.
Thank you. It's 11:40 p.m. and pretty much past my the time I usually go to bed. So I'm up here late for you guys to share some exciting information.
So thank you from from Tel Aviv here in the morning. So let's get straight to it. What is Credo? What's your solution? And just start with explaining what's Credo, and then we'll get to why should people invest in it.
Sure. So Credo is the token component of our solution to email spam. Credo solve email spam plus a secondary problem of email access. I'll touch on that in a second. With spam, it still costs the global economy about $20 billion per year. And there's estimates that from experts at Microsoft and Google that 70% of all emails sent are still spam emails. So even despite Bayesian spam filters and regulations, spam's still a big problem. In terms of how we solve it, what happens is you sign up for BitBounce, which is our service that's associated with Credo. And then you add one of your existing email accounts. We sync your contacts to a whitelist. And then when emails come in, if the sender isn't on the whitelist, we filter them out of your inbox and we send them an auto response asking them to pay a fee for their emails to come through. So the effect of that is your email inbox only contains emails from people that you know or ones that you've been compensated to receive. And so that effectively solves the spam problem right there. And we have about 10,900 active users right now. In terms of where Credo comes in, the payments in order for the emails to go through can be paid for in Credo.
Mm-hmm. So that's the innovative solution, to the email problem, basically making it a paid service. Question is, how would that that money will be allocated, like between the receiver of the emails and the company?
Sure. So right now, 70% is received by the recipient, and we take a 30% transaction fee, which was initially proposed by Tim Draper, who's been our lead investor, and he actually came up with the idea in the first place for BitBounce, which we can talk about as well. The vast majority is still going to the recipient. The second use case I wanted to talk about as well, beyond the spam problem, is email access. And so the problem there is when there's someone you want to reach who you don't know already, and you don't have someone that you can introduce, who can introduce you to them. In that case, you can send what we're calling an incentivized response email. And what happens there is you essentially attach cryptocurrency to an email. And so I'll send you an email, and you'll get a second one on the same thread saying, hey, you've got $25 worth of cryptocurrency held in escrow until you respond. And then when you respond, it goes through to you. And so it's a really easy way to contact people that you don't know through financial rather than social capital exchanges.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. It's a good way to make sure that anyone that's contacting you is relevant. Is not just blind asking for money.
Absolutely. And right now, I'm a Stanford computer science graduate, and so I get all kinds of recruiters sending me emails trying to recruit me, which I obviously don't want because I have my own company. And then because I'm listed as a company executive, I get tons of people trying to solicit their different products and services to me via email. So I'm inundated all the time by this kind of stuff. And now we've got a way where they can contact me and take up my attention, but they're going to have to pay for it.
I see. And how much, according to your research, how much is email spam still a problem? Because I think because of the spam is just one issue that caused people to move away from using emails, using Slack for work or messaging app for personal details. So how much of a market is there?
So there's still
email.
Right. So people have asked me this for a while, and if you actually look at the numbers, such as the Radicati Consulting Group have this really great email statistics report that they release annually, and it shows that we now have about 3.7 billion email users. It's growing at about 4% annually. So the total number of email users is basically a trailing indicator of internet growth. Because as everyone comes online, they need an email account in order to do things like e-commerce and social services. And on top of that, at least in the West, email is still the primary mode of business communication. And so in some places like Asia, WeChat is very popular, and other Slack is cannibalizing certain use cases, mostly internal communication, so intra-team communication. But from business to business or between companies, email is still the dominant form of communication in the West for business, and it's still pretty popular for personal as well. The other thing I'd add is right now we're very focused on email spam. That's partly because my background. I built a service called Turing Cloud, which is offered by our same service, which has a whole bunch of email functionality. So I really understand the technical side of that. Yet we are intending to bring our solution approach to other communication mediums as well, such as WeChat and other forms of messaging where they do also have spam and email access problems.
Mm-hmm. For anyone that doesn't know, WeChat is like the dominant messaging app in China, which does a lot more than just messaging, payments, everything they do.
It does. And we're marketing pretty heavily to the Chinese market in terms of our token sale. And when I've been talking with different Chinese potential purchasers of our token, they're telling me that it's a big problem. Spam's a big problem with WeChat. Most of them say that they have in their kind of pending message requests or people trying to message them they don't know, it just says 99999.
So it's it's a great problem in China as well. But you're open to more platforms than just email. Email is just the first start.
Yep, email is going to be the focus for quite a while, just because that's still it's a huge problem, and email is already globally adopted. So there's just a massive total addressable number of users to acquire there and to solve the problem for. Though eventually the roadmap is then to bring it to other use cases such as WeChat and SMS and phone communication as well.
I see. Well, I think that most of our viewers, as most of the Finance Magnet readers, are coming from the finance world. So definitely, they can use your anti-spam services on their business side, but also as investors, right? Why should people invest in your ICO? What's the value proposition for them?
So the value proposition in terms of the economics behind the token is we have a fixed supply of tokens and there's no inflation. So we've created about 1.37 billion tokens, and there are smart contracts. So this is put onto the blockchain and can't be changed, says that we can never create new tokens. So the supply side is fixed, and then the demand, essentially the thinking behind that is as adoption for BitBounce grows, there will be more organic demand for people to want to buy Credos in order to pay for their emails to either be received or responded to. And so in addition to in addition to the individual use cases, one of the things I'm pretty excited about is we recently had, a few weeks ago, a business contacted me and they said, we're starting to get dozens of BitBounces every day, and their editors were. And so, and they basically wanted me to stop the BitBounces from happening. So I said, well, why don't you pay tokens for your emails to go through and not be BitBounced? And I also agreed to essentially subsidize them because they were a test case. And they've done that, and now they're sending over 100 Credo transactions are happening per day for those emails to go through. And so I actually think that the marketing side, from a business marketing to consumers through email marketing, is going to be one of the major drivers of transaction volume. And so just going back to the previous point, basically, as adoption of BitBounce grows, both from a consumer and enterprise standpoint, the demand for our token is going to grow because the payments are made and denominated in that token. And since the supply is fixed, that should imply, with just economics 101, appreciation. We can't obviously make any guarantees about what's going to happen with the price, but the economic theory should support price appreciation in line with growing adoption of BitBounce.
Mm-hmm. But from what I read, people can also pay using Bitcoin for your services, not just the Credo.
Sure. So we built the first version of BitBounce using Bitcoin, and so that's something I'll say is we actually have a strong partnership with Coinbase, and we do all of that with Coinbase, and they're a real leader in the space. Tim Draper helped broker that partnership that we have there. So it was initially built with Bitcoin. We're making Credo really the primary and default currency that people use in order to pay for their emails to go through, especially from those businesses. When we're talking about that business paying over 100 transactions to reach their the people that they're emailing without being bit-bounced, they are all being paid in Credo. And so it's really becoming the default and main currency. And Bitcoin is something of a legacy item, although we might well continue to support it just because of there's marketing benefit when we're marketing towards the niche of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin enthusiasts.
I see. Well, that's clear. So if you can please tell us about Draper's involvement. How did you get to to be in such a connection and have investments from him?
Sure. So I basically in 2014 I was starting to transition into thinking I wanted to start my own business, and then my mother actually was affiliated with this program that he runs called Draper University at the time. And when I was first heard about it, I was skeptical of it. I was thinking, I've got a degree from Stanford. I've got all these connections from there. Is this something that I need? But she was quite encouraging. So I essentially attended this boot camp for 4 or 5 weeks. I made a connection there. Then he made an initial investment in my company. And then he's made 2 other investments since then. Along the way, we built our Turing Cloud enterprise SaaS suite, which is continuing to we're continuing to serve our customers, and it's continuing to grow. And that's essentially a sales and marketing suite with a lot of email functionality in there. And then Tim, at some point along the way, emailed me with the idea for BitBounce. Basically said, you'd be even more exciting if you did this. And at the start of this year, I decided to implement it. I did, and then the numbers started really growing, and the results that I've been getting from putting in energy into BitBounce have been exponentially more than with Turing Cloud, because Turing Cloud's always a very competitive sell. It's always, how does this compare with what I already have or the 10 alternatives that are on the market? Whereas BitBounce, there's nothing really like it. There's a couple of things, but not really, and we have strong advantages, and I can touch on that as well in a moment. And so it's a way easier sell. We're really innovating, and I've been having a much easier time. So then I've really focused on it. And then the latest investment, so this is, I guess, Tim's 4th investment now, is purely for tokens. And so in a pre-sale of our upcoming ICO, Tim has bought 10% of all Credo tokens that I guess will ever be created. And that was, I think, unique, at least in terms of, for him, his previous 2 ICO-related investments had been in the company. And so they were kind of indirect token investments, whereas this one was, I send them tokens and they wired us money.
I see. And how much is the valuation based on that? So how much do you think you're going to raise in the ICO?
So we're looking to raise a maximum of 20 million US dollars. And so the previous 2 ICOs Tim invested in, Bancor raised about 150 million and Tezos raised about $230 million. So they're talking pretty large values. For us, 20 million is what we need and a little bit more. And it's not, 100 million would almost be too much, I think, at this point. 20 million is closer to a substitute for what we would be raising in an equity round. And so that's actually an interesting part of this as an entrepreneur, or for any entrepreneurs listening. I was actually talking with Tim about raising a new equity round for the company. So, kind of a Series A. And I met with Tim. He'd indicated strong support well above the amount that he had kind of pro rata right that he would have been entitled to. And then some of the token sales stuff started coming up more and more. And I saw this natural fit within BitBounce for a token. And so now we've been raising the capital that we need through selling tokens rather than shares, which is pretty novel and really changes the game for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's incredible for entrepreneurs. I'm getting questions all day from all type of businesses that I never thought had any exposure to blockchain before. Everybody's thinking this is the VC process completely and just get money from from
look,
the crowd.
I'd say we can do it without selling any ownership, losing any control of the company, taking any rights that we wouldn't want to give up. So you can often do that in term sheets. And we're not taking any debt obligations on that we have to repay in the future. In fact, we can pay off some of the debt obligations we have. And we also get this incredible community of stakeholders that so far have been very helpful. So we actually sold about $100,000 worth in a pre-sale to some of our BitBounce early adopters and to some people in crypto groups that I'm affiliated with. And they've been very helpful. I now have this tribe of owners of our token that I cultivate through Facebook. And I post stuff there, and they're supportive with comments, feedback. One of them's written an article, another helped write a press release, another I'm working with on more media things. Another we're about to broker a partnership with because they co-founded an exchange. All kinds of things have been coming out of this that I didn't expect. I will add one more detail to that, is that I think that it's still very valuable to have the right investors, equity investors in your company. So Tim Draper has added tremendous value to my company through helping broker partnerships right at the top level, introduction to the CEO of the company that I wouldn't have been able to make happen myself, and supportive in terms of brand. But it basically gives, so I still say it's worth bringing on the right investors and having them have a stake in your company if they're going to provide the right kind of value. But it provides this whole other option for entrepreneurs that I think is a tremendous benefit for starting and growing a company.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, to have that combination. But if we're already giving advice to entrepreneurs, if somebody's has a brilliant idea, they didn't approach a VC yet, that they want to do an ICO, how would you advise them to go at it?
Well, I'd say that, first, if they're starting out from scratch, there's a few legal things you need to do in terms of incorporating your company and just making sure that the legal foundations, but almost any law firm will be able to help you with that. And so I just get all the details sorted there. There can be, with ICOs, some jurisdictions might have more favorable regulations, and so that can be something to look into, such as some of them are setting up in Switzerland, for instance. Once you've got the incorporation down, I'd basically try to do what I've been doing, which is network amongst the people in the blockchain community, because they can set you up with opportunities. So I've got the main advisor to the BAT token sale has been advising us. He introduced me to some people in China who have been extremely helpful in terms of marketing to the Chinese community. Plus, they're looking at doing a larger pre-sale investment before our ICO. Then I started attending some meetups that previously I was skeptical of attending because I wasn't sure of the value of them. But with blockchain, so I started attending Aetherium meetups, and now on Sunday, the 23rd, I'm actually speaking at 2 meetups, both the Silicon Valley Aetherium meetup and the San Francisco Aetherium meetup. The latter is kind of an honor because the previous 2 speakers were Brian Armstrong, the co-founder and CEO of Coinbase, and then Will, who is the CEO and co-founder of ZeroX, which is a very exciting project for Ethereum exchange protocol. And so then each person will lead you to another. So from that advisor, I got introduced to a few other people, and then every time I'd meet them, I'd say, I tell them about what we're doing. I'd say, what advice do you have? And then say, who do you know that might be able to help? And if you need to as well, you can also offer them tokens as compensation. So I've done that with some advisors. So I think there's this whole ecosystem around blockchain that's been developing, and people who know how to audit your smart contracts, to help you set it up if you're not technical, to advise you on the right kind of terms, to inform you on the white paper, to help you with legal. There's to help you with marketing. There's a whole gamut in the community. What you need to do is connect with all those people, and so continue working on the value proposition of what you're building and the engineering and growth in users, so you have a real fundamental value proposition. But then go into networking mode and meet all these people that can help you facilitate a really successful ICO.
That's great advice. And what about China specifically? Can you tell us about that? How do you approach that market?
Sure. Well, we've been translating all our main materials into simplified Chinese. So our entire white paper has been translated, and if you go to our landing pages, you can see Chinese symbols, and if you click on that, then it'll flip into simplified Chinese. And so that's the first thing, is just speaking literally their language. And then secondly, we essentially have a WeChat community set up over there, which we're cultivating an audience with. Then we have, we're working with one group in particular, and they have helped us get a few reports in Chinese written on our token that have actually been great analysis when I've looked at them. It's fun reading stuff that's written by someone else in their words on what you're doing, and often it has revealing insights in there, even when written in Chinese. And so there's been some reports, and then also just media articles. And I will send them any new links, such as if we have an article, if there's something such as the Tim investment, which was significant news, then I'll send that to them, and they'll inform the WeChat community, and if appropriate, they'll send out a press release to the Chinese crypto media. And so I think you want to speak their language, and then you want to work with people who understand the crypto community over there, because it's significant. From some of these main ICOs, that they've been estimated something like 30 to 60% of the demand for the ICOs come from China. So there's a real appetite over there for crypto investments, and in some ways, I think they're kind of ahead of the game with us, but they're very much looking to back and invest in Western or West kind of founded and led projects.
Yeah, that's definitely how I found to be the case right now. It's I wouldn't know to say a absolute majority, but definitely a large part of the investments come from the Chinese crypto sphere. People that made a lot of money on Bitcoin or Ethereum, and they're just looking for ways to expand their portfolios in a way that with stocks they're not allowed to do. They're not allowed to invest in non-Chinese stocks. So
there's a whole set of opportunities that we have access to. Especially if you're an American, that are listed on NASDAQ or the public exchanges over here that they can't invest in, and that's loss of a lot of opportunity for them, whereas they have essentially equal access to the ICO opportunities. Plus, I think that for the Chinese, where the government can, they have, I'd say, less secure property rights, having kind of ownership of the private keys and crypto assets might be a more comfortable way to store some of their wealth as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Okay, so let's get back to the technology side. Okay, for people that are interested in the product. So let's say from a cybersecurity, should I trust your company with handling my email traffic?
Well, firstly, I'm doing everything that we can right now. So we have, I have a Stanford computer science degree, study a certain amount of security there, and then we're hosting, we store a pretty minimal amount of information, or about the minimum that we can, or have to in order to operate the service. Yet that data that we do store is hosted on Amazon Web Services, which are very secure as well, and have top cloud security. Part of what we're going to be looking to do, and I address this in the white paper, is spend some of the resources on really bolstering our security efforts. And so we're going to be looking to bring on additional domain experts there, additional technologies to make us more robust, third-party audits, and increased use of encryption to a further degree than we're doing right now. Plus, there's some other creative options that we're going to do in terms of what data and permissions we have access to, especially for enterprises. So I think we're doing everything that we can right now in order to be as secure as possible. Post ICO, post token sale, when we have those resources, I think we're only going to get more secure because of the resource we're going to dedicate to that in particular. I basically see the use of proceeds as one, improving our service. So that's product improvements, recruiting more kind of VIPs that can be accessed on the platform, brokering partnerships. Secondly, acquiring more market share. So a lot of different marketing and growth, as well as the viral components we have right now. And then thirdly is really security and defending against certain threat vectors.
I see. Yeah, because for any business, encryption and privacy is highly important, but especially in the crypto sphere, people are very concerned about their their privacy being guarded. So I think what's your your stated policies about like selling metadata or providing metadata for advertisers or governments in case
So right now we have no, and we do not sell any data, and we have no plans to sell metadata. That's not part of our business model. Additionally, in terms of the point that you were just asking about with crypto companies, I met with a friend who has who founded and is the CEO of a Series A crypto startup. They work with international money transfers, but through the blockchain. And he said that it's gotten to the point that in order to authenticate or authorize a wire or some kind of transaction, they need to see video of him and be talking and do it over there, because people have emulated voice and had voice emulator, so they can't do it through that means. So it has to be through video. So they're very security conscious. And so what I'm thinking of doing for them, which will be a little bit more on the marketing, and we also are looking at doing a proof of concept in addition to the one we're doing for essentially incentivized lead generation campaigns. So you can imagine our email access feature or incentivized response, where you pay someone in order to respond to you, sent to leads and sent to a bulk list of leads. And so each of those leads receives essentially an email saying that if they respond and engage, then they'll receive a certain amount of cryptocurrency. And so we're looking at things like that with them. And what we would be doing likely with that use case, because it's not directly on the spam one, is we might well set up a separate account for them to send those outgoing emails and then handle the incoming that can be used and dedicated for BitBounce. So one of the, there's a principle in security of essentially trying to minimize the amount that is at risk or exposed, both in terms of data and permissions. And so That's what to the minimum amount that you absolutely need. And so that's what we'd be trying to embody, especially in these enterprise environments where security is most paramount.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Okay, I see we're nearing the 30 minutes mark, and I don't want to keep you up. You know, I know it's very late in California at the moment. So, what else do you think our audience need to know about your company and about the ICO?
Well, firstly, our domain is bitbounce.io. So I'd go there and you can both sign up for our service, so try it out yourself. And then you can also click on, there's a banner where it mentions Credo. And I'd recommend clicking on that and downloading our white paper and reading our white paper ahead of the ICO. There's 8 days left to make a decision on participating. And so put July 26th in your calendar and be ready. If you sign up and register for an account for BitBounce, then I'm sending out emails to our users as a mailing list. And so you'll be informed about how to participate there. In terms of what it is, you know, I think that we are going to have one of the most powerful distribution mechanisms for getting our token out to a massive audience. You know, we've already got around 11,000 active users. We're adding a few hundred per day. I can see that getting into the millions, and us having an easy way to get our token out to millions of token holders, which is something that many other ICOs would struggle to do. So I really believe that we're going to be able to create one of the premier tokens out there, and we're going to solve a huge problem with email spam and email access at the same time.
That sounds very promising. So
Thanks.
I want to thank you again, Stewart, and I want to for joining us, and I want to thank our audience for listening to this very interesting discussion. And you know, please like, share, and subscribe to keep following us.
Thanks for having me, Avi.
Thank you.
Bye.